Welcome to the Science and Paranormal with Dr. Yana and Dr. Elliot, where science meets the unexpected, where we delve deep into the mysteries that straddle the line between scientific inquiry and paranormal. Get ready for a mind-altering journey as we embark on this phenomenal discovery together on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hello, good evening. We are here live on United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM. Again, you're with us with Science and Paranormal with fabulous Dr. Elliot and myself, Dr. Yana. Well, Dr. Elliot, looks like we are talking today on remote viewing. And we had a guest, Lyn Buchanan, and somehow he is a no-show today. So we don't know where he is. Hopefully he will join us later. But meanwhile, Dr. Elliot and I will be talking on this topic, right?
That's right. We're going to talk about remote viewing, or what some people call the seventh sense.
The seventh sense, exactly. What is the sixth sense?
Well, it's not your psychic abilities, believe it or not.
What is it?
It's not really sense. That's a great question. The extrasensory perception is something outside of our senses, so it's not really considered the sixth sense. I don't know what the sixth sense would be. We obviously have more than five senses. I mean, your main primary senses are hearing, sight, smell, taste, and of course, touch.
I thought probably the sixth sense would be the enhanced intuition ability to perceive things that ordinarily are not perceived. And of course, ESP would be there as well. Don't you think?
Well, it often gets called the sixth sense, but I know the Rhine Research Center promotes that it is not a sense, because it falls under the extrasensory perception. But I'm sure that there's other senses, that we use or that would be classified now. I mean, you know how society is. We love to throw acronyms and labels on everything. I'm sure that there's probably 50 senses.
Oh, yeah. And, throughout the history, I have realized that we use one of the different terminology for one and the same thing. And somehow we like to come with this elaborate terminology and different classification of things while they're all one and the same. For example, I noticed that hypnosis, of course, hypnosis at one time was pretty popular. And then all of a sudden, for the past decade or so, there's been a shift in perception of hypnosis. And there was, and still is, some negative connotation to it, negative perception. And it's because of the lack of education, I believe. However, people are more comfortable with meditation. Looks like meditation is less threatening. So when people talk about meditation or hypnosis, which is called meditation techniques, right? One of them. Then people are less on the guard and they are more accepting of the idea, which is kind of interesting to me. But again, for the lack of education of the population, meditation as the term that has been so overused has no difference between hypnosis and meditation.
I just did some quick research, and they technically do have other senses that they talk about. One is balance, which is, obviously your sense of body movement, which I talk about in my paranormal lectures. That's our ability to detect heat or cold. Usually talk about that with cold spots and hot.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have kinesthesia, which is the sense of the relative position of body parts and strength of effort employed in movement. So certainly there are a lot more senses out there than the typical five.
Yes, and I believe that we historically, evolutionary, had more senses than we have now, and unfortunately, we lost them. You know, I was very interested in the fact that the king cobras they have the third eye that they actually did not lose, but unfortunately, it gets calcified for them, and they lose it at the time when they hit the old age.
Really?
Yes, it does. So when they're
I didn't
young, they
know that.
have this right on the top of their head between the eyes. They do have the niche that holds a little oblong, elongated, can say the object. Um, what would it be? I guess one of the body organs for the king cobra. This is something that would be similar to our pineal gland because
Interesting.
it also fulfills the functions of the third eye, right? So they do have this third eye, but actually it's a physical third eye. I don't quite know how they use it because they still have it and they have not lost it while they are young. But I know that it is an absolutely a very expensive treasure for people who can find that third eye that the snake sheds when it gets old. So evidently, it possesses some metaphysical qualities. However, it is my understanding that by itself, it probably wouldn't, but for people, it has a very dear meaning. So that is why it is sold for multiple thousands of dollars. And of course, that now we have a lot of fake snake eyes for the third eye. But it is an interesting thing. So if we used our pineal gland more, the third eye, we would be able to perceive more than we are able to perceive now. So this is unfortunate. While with the remote viewing as a practice associated with the paranormal, which is our topic, eternal topic that involves attempting to gather information about the distant or unseen target using extrasensory perception as ESP or anomalous cognition. So, practitioners claim to be able to mentally see or describe details about a location, object, or person that is not accessible to them through normal sensory channels. So, if we look at that, then where do we get this information and which antenna do we use in order to get to the place to retrieve that information? This is very interesting.
It is very interesting. Yeah, and like you said, it's usually done through our extrasensory perception, and we just did actually in our parapsychology class. You were the target. We did a remote viewing experiment, and we kind of had some mixed results. I think two people had thought you were outside, and but when we looked at it, we did find some similarities. So there was one gentleman that in the course that thought you were outside and you were laying on a blanket on the beach, and he saw your dog. And actually, like when he drew the dog, I don't know if you remember seeing his sketch, but it kind of looked like your white dog, like your poodle. That's similar to mine, and I kind of had the outside of your building. Bit of a description there. Daryl, he didn't do a drawing, but he said that he kind of pictured your bookshelf when he saw the rooms that you had sent. He said he envisioned a bookshelf that looked very much like that. So it was kind of interesting if you took each student and teacher's kind of perceptions and put it all together. It would have presented a very accurate picture. It's almost like we were each just getting like tiny little pieces from you.
That's interesting. However, there was a commonality, yes, between the reports of students, uh, and a lot of them said that was at the beach,
Yeah, yeah.
which I wasn't.
There was a couple that said you were at the beach. Yeah, and I remember them talking about it in class with Daryl and I. They said it could have been because we did tell them like the location is San Diego because we needed them to hone in on, somewhere. I didn't give specific coordinates or anything like that. So they said maybe because they were thinking California, they were thinking beach.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And of course, since I was a target, a lot of the people were able to access my information, where I live, and my abode, and the address, of course, and being just living only 7 minutes from the beach, I guess. Like, where could I be?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Where could I be? Yeah. So this is very interesting. However, I must say that you and your perception was the most precise one when you were able to view the building from the outside, because you did not know where I lived. You did not know that I did not live just in the house. I live in the townhomes adjacent to each other, which we do have pathways and bushes just exactly like you described. And that was most fascinating to me, because when you got inside, you weren't as precise. And that made me think, and I remember that I shared that with you, which should bring us to the discussion on why there were quite a lot of similarities between other reports right on the inside. But that morning, I had an unpleasant encounter, and I realized that I was psychically exposed, and I had to close myself up because the person that I encountered was not a particularly clean, psychically clean person. And I closed myself up. I close myself up just like the way that I know how to do it. I should probably do it every morning, but then dealing with people, I'm not able to exchange energies. And of course, that the energy is the leading factor in helping people and in healing process. And I wasn't I didn't have anyone, any customers, any clients at the time. So I decided that that would be a good idea just to close up. And the interesting thing is that uh, not only I close myself up, I close the place where I live.
Yeah, actually, it was interesting, and I can't remember if I told you this, but when we did the debriefing class with the students, there was one gentleman that had participated in a remote viewing exercise before, and he actually said that he had a really difficult time trying to tune into you, and he felt like he was having some sort of mental block. He said, and I knew the information that you had told me,
Mm.
so I thought that was really interesting. Um, because he said he has had like some better successes on other things, but with you, he felt like there was like a mental block there. So that was really interesting. The concept of remote viewing has been traced back to ancient times. They used to kind of practice it during the scrying and divination periods, but where it became really popular was in the 1970s when the U.S. government started to fund remote viewing research, and they had a couple of special projects. One of them, which is very popularly known, still a lot of the documents are classified, but they have admitted to it, which is Project Stargate. But still, a lot of the documents are still sealed and not released, which is interesting. Having worked for the government, I mean, there's only certain reasons why you keep information classified. It's that it's got information on, other foreign agencies that you don't want them to know about. It's got confidential informant information in there, or agents that are in the field, or government employees that are in the field that there could be jeopardized. So yeah, it's really interesting. Even though their official kind of explanation for it was that it wasn't really that successful, is what they came out and said.
Yeah, yeah, this is very interesting that they say it wasn't that successful,
Yet everything's
because
still classified.
yeah, it started, yes, in 1970s. United States believed that the Soviet Union was spending 60 million rubles annually, and at that time, ruble was equal to $1 on a cent, they were spending that on psychotronic research. And in response to claims that the Soviet program had produced results, the CIA initiated funding for a new program known as SCANAID, Scan by Coordinate, which of course, like later was called the Stargate Project. Well, then the remote viewing began in 1972 in Stanford Research Institute in Menlo Park, California. So the proponents Russell Targ and Harold Putnam of the research said that the minimum accuracy rate was 65%, required by the clients was often exceeded in the later experiments. But it's very sad that then later on it was deemed as ineffective, and then it was declassified. Because later on, consider that, just think about it, in 1995, so the program lasted for 23 years. So what? So the government was paying, supporting and funding that program for 23 years with $20 million.
I was just gonna say, imagine the amount of money that cost.
Yeah,
What did the Russians have any similar projects that were ever disclosed? Are you familiar with any of their results?
well, the Russians were working on that, and the interesting thing is that there were few people that were even televised, and their abilities were televised. But then, at the end, there was some controversy that the results that were shown they were actually fabricated. But of course, the psychic research in Russia was very well investigated. But my belief that, and of course, how do we do things here? Is that we have to create a base that something is happening someplace else and to justify our actions here. So that's exactly, it is my understanding. And of course, that I'm not saying that there was no similar program in Russia, in Soviet Union at the time. However, we didn't do anything of that before, and we decided that we definitely need to start researching that as well. So, unfortunately, it wasn't working as they said. And the CIA commissioned the report by the nonprofit American Institute for Research that found that remote viewing had not been proved to work by a psychic mechanism. But my question is that for 23 years that it's been funded and supported, right? And all of a sudden, it was stopped and declassified, and all the information came out to the general public. So it must have been something there, right, that they were able to use during the 23 years for it to last that long. What do you think?
Well, you don't study a phenomena for that amount of time, and like you said, that probably that amount of money, and we probably don't even know the half of what they spent. Um, if you weren't having some success, I mean, the reason that they wanted to do this was to gather information about distant or hidden targets, especially military installations and enemy activities. And you got to remember as well, this is during the Cold War period. Um, so I'm sure that they probably did have some success. I know that Russell Targ, like you mentioned before, is kind of one of the leading experts on remote viewing, and you just talked about their stat um, being in the 60% success rate. I know they also worked with Ingo Swann and had quite a bit of success with Ingo. There was one incident where he was actually famous for describing, I think it was the planet. I think it was Jupiter. It was Jupiter, yeah, because of the storm. But he had described this giant planet. He described the storm, the turbulent atmosphere, a few other details about it, and there was a couple of details that he had given about Jupiter that hadn't been confirmed at the time until several years later when a satellite passed by and was actually able to take a good look at Jupiter, and they found out that his description of the planet was actually quite accurate. So that that's I always find that really interesting. I know I just pulled out my notes from parapsychology because we're in week 7 of 8, and in week 4 and 5 we kind of talk about remote viewing. So there's actually 3 forms of remote viewing. There's what they call CRV, or coordinated remote viewing. So this is where a viewer is given a set of coordinates, usually a series of numbers like GPS numbers, and that represents a target location. And then the viewer attempts to describe the target location using their psychic abilities, often producing drawings or writing descriptions. Then there's ERV, or extended remote viewing, and that's a variation of remote viewing where the viewer enters a meditative or altered state of consciousness to access information about a target. And it often involves the viewer providing a continuous narrative of what their impressions are. And then the third type of remote viewing is ARV, or associative remote viewing. And this combines remote viewing with decision making processes. So viewers are able to predict the outcome of future events, such as a sports game or a stock market performance, by accessing information through remote viewing. Do you know what type we performed?
We performed.
We did ERV, the extended remote viewing, because in our description, we told the students to find a quiet spot in the home to make sure that they were, not stressed out or not waiting to the last minutes. You wanted to get settled into your quiet private room. You wanted to kind of clear your mind, almost like entering a meditative state. And then also, we told them to think positively, because that's been something that has come up in remote viewing experiences. Is you have to have the belief that you can do it, which makes sense. If you're sitting there thinking that you can't do it, you're probably going to not do a very great job and fail at your objective. So that was one thing that we taught the students was, have, it might sound weird if you're getting a image of a dog or a beach towel, but just have an open mind, stay positive, write down what what you're perceiving, because you never know if it's going to be valuable or not. And it was, like I said, we had kind of mixed results. Almost everybody kind of had a little piece of the puzzle there, and even one of our students said that he felt mentally blocked, which was interesting because, like you said earlier that day, you were kind of looking at grounding yourself and putting some protection techniques up.
Yeah, our guest, which did not show up today, Lyn Buchanan, he is actually talking that we can all develop these abilities, and even if they originally the Stargate project recruited psychic people or people with psychic abilities. I have to be politically correct here. Then, of course, they were able to develop the program, which even at this moment he is teaching in Arizona, the remote viewing program. And they were able to teach just regular people, and of course there were military people like himself, how to view information at a distance, how to access that information. And later he understood that it is possible to even teach this set of qualities and just follow simple methodology and being able to access that information, which is absolutely wonderful. But if I want to jump from here to Mars, for example, we won't be able to do that. We have to follow certain steps in order to develop that. But what's so interesting is that we're coming back to the understanding of our intuition. For some of us, of course, it is developed wonderfully. For some, we don't even believe in that, like you said, right? You have to be able to believe that you have it, because people who are able to exercise their intuition find it easier to live, because they find answer to their questions ahead of time. So they have the precognition moments. So with the student of yours that encountered that block, could be in fact the moment of true remote viewing, because like I mentioned to you, with the nature of my work, I cannot be widely open to people, to any sorts of energies. I have to be able to protect myself, and if we believe that we live in a world that is just a purely physical world, an intellectual world, we're mistaken. And a lot of people, even during the Cold War era, when they were doing research in that area, people actually from the military, like the representative Charles Rose, the chairman of the Intelligence and Oversight Subcommittee, said some of the intelligence officers that were involved in remote viewing, they knew that remote viewing works, but the research was blocked, interestingly enough,
Hmm.
because they claimed that it is not as good as the satellite photography. Well, of course it is not, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a photography and you're
Yeah. Of
drawing.
course.
But he said that, of course, that would be much cheaper to use this methodology rather than just the satellite photography. And he said, if the Russians have it and we don't, we are in a serious trouble. And interestingly enough, that there were a lot of other highly ranking military officers that not just believed that in remote viewing, they knew that it worked. And how do you know that it works? You have evidence, and with evidence you are able to understand. And like, of course, like for the military, imagine military is not um, the study of philosophy, right? They're not philosophers. They're not sitting in their chairs or walking around and philosophizing about, hypothesizing about things, right? They are interested in end result, which, okay, we need to find a target. And they did. They found one of the targets of the lost, I believe, Russian spy airplane, which they were able to find by remote viewing. And these declassified documents are a proof of that. But of course, um, since it was declassified and the program ended, how much of that actually worked? So we don't know that. But again, if that was so easy, for example, for your student or for you, for example, to perceive, and I'm not minimizing your ESP abilities, because yeah,
No,
because
no, no
for
offense taken, Dr.
yeah,
Leonard.
yeah, because for some people it's easier. Like you did not even know about it up until I told you, hey, listen, that you're perfectly capable of that, and I know it. And then you started to believe, saying that, oh yeah, maybe I do, right? Yes, you do, but we don't believe in that. We don't understand. But what is believe? Believe in something that you don't understand, that you've never seen. You're told to believe, and you believe in that, right? But if you
Mhm.
see the confirmation, like you did several times, of your ESP
Right.
abilities, then you know that it works. So the word would be to know instead of to believe, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I do think
Yeah.
that
So your student, for example, he wanted to know, but nevertheless, he was open enough and honest enough to admit that he couldn't see it. And next time you talk to him, just tell him that his perception was absolutely 100% correct.
yeah, I
And
will. I will.
not just when I put that defense, energy defense on myself, that I think, oh, it might or might not work. I do it intentionally. And as a funny example of that, of course, I put the defense on my house as well, and I keep telling my neighbors that they are so blessed that I live right next to them, because because I said when I was setting this defense mechanism on my house, I said, not one single foot of a person with a dark heart, with a bad energy, bad intentions, it's going to step over the threshold of my house. As simple as that. I did not have to perform anything, any rituals. I didn't have to burn any sages. I didn't jump. I did not have to get into any kind of shamanic trance. I simply said that, and you just have to be able to invoke certain energies. And it is a science. It is a science that we get to it. It is a science now. And the funny thing, a lot of the people with good hearts that are my friends are able to come to me and nothing happens. But those whom I later found out that they're not a good match, we're not a good match either to work or to be friends or for any other reason, they're not able to find my place at all. They circle around, circle and circle, and they say that we're not able to find your place. And we finally left. So that's the
That's interesting.
confirmation as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
it's
fascinating.
easy.
That's really fascinating. Sometimes I know remote viewing is used with law enforcement. I've never used it myself or on any of my cases, but probably one of the most prominent cases happened in California. Not sure if you remember this one, but there was a missing person named Patty Hearst that had been kidnapped, and it was by a radical group there in 1974. And they actually called the Stanford Research Institute
Mm-hmm.
and talked with Russell Targ, who
Mm-hmm.
was working with Pat Price at the time. He was a psychic and a remote viewer doing work with Stanford. And they ended up asking them to help out because they were quite concerned about Patty. She was taken by a radical group. It gained international attention. So during the investigation, Pat Price had tried to remote view, use his abilities. He was able to provide law enforcement with several pieces of information, including the whereabouts of some of the group members, some of the general areas where they were hiding at. Um, Eventually, the FBI was able to find Patty Hearst through conventional investigative practices. It was kind of interesting too. I guess she was convicted of robbing a bank and claimed that this radical group had put her up to it. And she was later pardoned by President Bill Clinton. So yeah, it was an interesting case. It kind of has mixed results on whether or not the remote viewing part was successful in finding her, but nonetheless, he was, Pat Price was actually able to provide some information that was corroborated through law enforcement when they followed up with it. So,
And this makes us think that if we are able to do that, right, how come we are not able to do other things? So, if that organization was able to view things locally, of course, they were able to use it at a distance as well. Because I know that myself, that I am able to see things at in other countries, in the cities that I've never been to. I can see, even I can go to the past, and sometimes I can go into the future. But I don't normally go into the future for to see my own events in my own life. But when my clients are asking me to look it up, how it is going to be for them, when in fact what they do it themselves. I tell them how to do it, and they are able to look into the future. Uh, but what's interesting about it, that do we come across the idea of a free will if we are able to look up the future? Because with the remote viewing, it is not only the present events, it's also the past events and the future events, because the research was done in Russia, and that was done in the 90s, with the transference of information from one place to another at high distances. And people on the receiving end were able to receive the information a few hours ahead than when it was transferred. That really puzzled the Russian scientists, and they did not know how to take it. And they realized that in the north, uh, the time flows differently. And somehow, if we are able to receive the information ahead of time, then the idea of the remote viewing has to be investigated at the high length. But nevertheless, we don't do that. You know what I've noticed? I've noticed that for the past, for the 20th century, and of course for during our century, a lot of the programs like that are being shut down. So this is not the only one. Yeah, it lasted for 23 years, either here or in Russia or in other countries. These programs are being shut down, and not for the lack of the evidence, because a lot of the times there is evidence, there's scientific evidence, and of course the studies, scientific studies with a lot of data to prove. However, they are being shut down. Like it is my understanding that the CIA hired the nonprofit organization to create artificially that particular conclusion and to declassify it and doom it as non-scientific and not working.
Yeah, the Russians. That's why I had asked you if you're familiar with any sort of project that they had similar to Stargate that was released, because they certainly took an interest in it. I might be butchering this Russian scientist's last name, but there was a Russian scientist named Leonid Vasilev, Vasiliev.
Leonid Vasiliev. Uh-huh. You
Okay,
just have to pronounce it with a Russian accent for me to understand it.
There you go. He ended up thinking that remote viewing was some kind of form of telepathy using electromagnetic waves, and he came up with the extreme low frequency wave theory that was tested over the years. And they tried very hard to kind of prove that theory. But then there was a U.S. Navy project called Project Deep Quest, where they found out that ultimately ELF waves were not responsible for um, remote viewing, but they had success doing remote viewing during this project. There was a shipwreck off the coast of Santa Catalina Island, which had already been investigated. They were trying to find it. They used electronic devices to survey the ocean, didn't find anything. But during Project Deep Quest, they were actually able to locate the wreck and recover it.
And that is another confirmation of the efficacy. And of course, that there is a human factor as well, how well we are able to look into the uh, objects and places and events. And of course, the picture, the people who do remote viewing, they don't say that, oh, it is just like being able to view the information in reality with the open eyes. It is not. It is obscure, of course. But at the same time, if they are given the task what to look for, and of course those studies, there were blind studies, and the people did not know what they were looking for. uh, they say that it is not as clear, but nevertheless, they were able to produce um, drawings of the places and constructions that existed in reality, of the real places. And that's what is interesting. And that becomes the objective reality. And I don't understand why we don't continue this research. I believe that with applying perhaps frequencies, right, and the sound frequencies, we will be able to perceive more or affect the pineal gland to the extent that we're able to perceive more information, right, or able to access more information. Because I do, like I told you, I do research on myself. Anything that I can find, I investigate it on myself. I'm my own guinea pig. And if we look at the ancient civilizations, they would always have some sort of musical instruments and attributed to goddesses. And then the humans, the mortal humans, were using that in order to access those higher planes to get this information. Uh, so what's interesting about it that when I started investigating the frequencies and how they affect us, some lower frequencies, like you just said, right? With the Russian research, some lower frequencies, they do affect me really badly. And somehow with those frequencies, I get on the lower plane, astral plane, without even wanting to do that. But there were the higher frequencies, interestingly enough, that I started to get dreams, prophetic dreams. And not only that, I'm able to enhance my intuition and remote viewing abilities. So we can still, there is a huge field that we have not investigated, and perhaps would be a good idea to continue. But then again, if the government is not interested, where are we going to get money to do that?
That's very true. And I mean, I'm not surprised. Most parapsychological laboratories have dried up, across the world, really. You still got the Rhine Research Center, which is a private nonprofit organization in North Carolina, and of course, you've got the Kessler Parapsychological Unit over in Scotland. But for the most part, like I was just looking for a laboratory here in Canada, a parapsychological laboratory here in Canada, and we have laboratories, but we don't have parapsychological laboratories. And speaking of parapsychological laboratories, we'll get into that here in a second. But right now, you're listening to Science and the Paranormal. We're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM out of beautiful New Orleans. And you can also find us on Roku TV. But speaking of laboratories, the PAIR laboratory, for anyone that has heard of that, it's the Princeton Engineering
Anomalous research. Mm-hmm.
Research. They actually published over many, many years, they published papers where they found that remote viewing was significant, and it didn't matter what method was used, they had successes. So there's lots of, I think, evidence out there that it works. I think it's the same thing as any other psychic ability. I think that some people are better at it than others. Some people have developed how to do it better than others, but it would certainly have a lot of advantages. Like in law enforcement, it could have advantages to finding missing people or possibly items involved in crimes. We talked about it with anthropologists using it for sites. A lot of times, historical anthropological sites are discovered by accident. In fact, here in Nova Scotia, a couple of years ago, they're expanding one of our highways. They came across a 100-year-old home that was built completely out of stone. And of course, they stopped and they called the universities and they taped off the area, and they're actually going to save it. But again, discovered by accident. So if you're an anthropologist and you're having difficulty trying to find a site or trying to find an item,
Mm-hmm.
it's might cost you a tiny little bit of money. If you had to pay, a fee or some travel for the remote viewer to actually come there, but a lot of it can be done through distance. We know that ESP has no distant limitations. You even mentioned that earlier tonight in the show about
Even the
distance
time
not being
limitations. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so they could do it remotely. All you're doing is maybe wasting some time if it doesn't work out properly, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, who knows, maybe there are some black government projects still using remote viewers, but I
Well,
don't
we
know.
have, of course, that we had in the past, McCultra, the CIA project, right? The covert CIA program that aimed at developing techniques for mind control, which included exploring various forms of behavioral modification and psychological manipulation, right? They used drugs such as LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, and other techniques. So, of course, that was in the past. But there was also the project called Sunstreak, DIA. It was another US Defense Intelligence Agency project focused on remote viewing, similar to Stargate,
Hmm.
and it involved the collection of intelligence information through paranormal means, primarily remote viewing again, and it was which was later merged to the Stargate project. And the one that I'm remembering is called the project Grill Flame. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't actually.
Yeah, it was conducted by the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command. I hope I'm gonna still be here tomorrow, and no one's gonna come after me for talking about it. In conjunction with the Defense Intelligence Agency, they did that, which was focused on exploring remote viewing and other psychic phenomena for intelligence gathering purposes. So essentially, we had sleeper agents, and unfortunately, our sleeper spy did not come to us today. Hopefully, he will in the future. But meanwhile, you and I, as good as practitioners of remote viewing, we can also have great insight into that. He would talk to us, of course, on his own experiences in the military program, and writing that book, The Seventh Sense, is just a confirmation that it actually worked, that he was able to see what ordinarily we wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting you mentioned MK Ultra because I remember reading a newspaper many years ago now, but there was a lawsuit up here in Canada because, believe it or not, the Canadian government had allowed the U.S. government to experiment on
mhm.
some of our citizens from
Yeah, it
the
was
experiments
bad.
were done
Mhm.
in Montreal, Quebec, at the
That's
McGill
right.
University, and
Mhm.
there was a lawsuit launched the Canadian government because, like you said, they were using LSD. They were doing different mind control techniques. Some people that had relatively mild psychological issues ended up developing very severe mental and physical impairments because
They were
of.
completely impaired, right? They
Oh yeah,
developed disability. Mhm.
yeah. They had trauma, amnesia, severe psychological damage. It's a very interesting concept when you look at, and it's not the first project that's been done, but when the government, your own government, looks at experimenting on you, um, it's almost like you're getting ready to sit down and watch like a wild movie. It's hard to believe that it happens, but it does happen.
Except that you're a participant in that movie, and it's better not to ever get into the altercation with the government. Of course, I remember that I was working on the dissertation, and I was writing such an innocuous, seemingly innocuous topic on perception of deception through the body language. And of course, me, myself, and we chose a population, which is Middle Eastern population, how to perceive deception based on that, because I'm from there, and I was doing my research on it, and I found another person who was doing the research on the similar topic, and he did it extensively. And I tried to contact him, but all my attempts were unsuccessful because he was doing that research and he was publishing that. And of course, as a scientist, he would publish that. However, the government came to him and said, "Hey, you cannot publish that," which I believe that he probably should have agreed to that. And this kind of research cannot really be public. It is scientific research, but nevertheless, it can threaten the security of your country. So I believe that he probably should have stopped it, but he refused. And three times that he refused, there was no fourth time. There was no fourth time. So I couldn't find him just because he was obliterated from the face of Earth. So is difficult. I would never want to be the part of any government project. So, but we
No.
have now the Institute of Noetic Sciences, right? That was founded by the astronaut Edgar Mitchell, and which conducts research on human consciousness and extended human capacities. Right? We have the Global Consciousness Project. I think you just mentioned it, right?
Not tonight, but
Oh,
yeah, the Global Consciousness Project kind of looks at
hmm,
international incidents that occur, and they kind of monitor our consciousness from all over the world, on a global scale when there's mass events that happen.
yeah. They use random number generators placed around the world to detect anomalies that correlate with major global events. Which we do. We still do the research. It's just uh, not on the large scale.
No, no, certainly it's hard to get funding, for parapsychology and anything to do with parapsychology, just because we still come under a lot of criticism. They talk about our methodology being flawed, and the way that we do our statistics, that it's flawed. But I always say, actually, parapsychology laboratory work is actually pretty solid, because we face so much skepticism and criticism, that they've developed their methods over and over again. And I know, when Daryl Bem came out with his paper that ESP is real, that really shook the scientific community. But Bem's experiment, because he actually told people, here's a package, you can try and replicate it if you want. Um, and he was very like open about having it examined by his peers, which is a great sign, you know. And he had significant results. So for anyone listening that isn't sure what Bem's experiment was, he had basically random event generator, a computer that would put up images, and every once in a while it would put up kind of an erotic image. And eventually, after a few trials,
Interesting. Mhm.
individuals were able to actually tell when the erotic image was going to pop up. Um, I believe that females actually had a stronger hit on it than males did. That more females were successful in that than males.
Well, because for women, their intuition is much more developed. So it probably would be just a natural thing.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's our abilities. We just started to investigate our abilities. Somehow we shut every project down, but nevertheless, I think there is more. And like you said, that you have to believe that you are able to see, to know, and participate, right? To get some information, anything that you set your mind for, you have to be able to believe that you are able to do that.
Mm,
When we say, oh, I'm going to try, I would warn every single person who says, I'm going to try, or just suggest that other people try to do something, to eliminate that word completely, because it's either you do it or you don't. There's no such thing as trying. And of course, it's probably my uh, strict Russian upbringing, but nevertheless, it's either you do it or you don't, because you otherwise set yourself up for uh, failure, because you know that you can stop at any time. But if you don't have anything, no safety net, if you know that there's nothing behind it, that you either do it or you don't, or you fail completely, right? Then you do it. And that's when it works. Because if you remember such interesting fact from my teaching time, I told you that I had students, and I was teaching them, the military students, and teaching them Russian. Somehow, one of the students who did not have any previous experience with Russian, he was able in about 3 months to speak very good Russian. And that astounded me. And I thought, how is this possible? And I asked him a question because others were not. And he said, well, at the beginning of every class, you had a 5 minute hypnosis session. And you told us that we already know Russian. All we have to do is to remember it. And he said, I believed you. And
Hmm.
that is power of the mind, people. He believed me that he already knew Russian. And not that it wasn't just I knocked them all out and put them in a deep state of hypnosis. It was 5 minutes. They closed their eyes, and I told them that they already know Russian. And some of them were fell asleep because they wanted to rest, even if it was 8 o'clock in the morning. Uh, but nevertheless, some did not believe, but he did. He took that information close to his heart, and bam, he spoke Russian. And that you can do anything with that if you believe that you're able to do that. Because look at that, our technology, our civilization is pushed by those people who believed in impossible. And there were so many naysayers next to them saying that, oh, you're going to fail, you're going to fail, you're going to fail. What if they believe them?
Yes, you have to believe. We've talked a lot about belief in the paranormal, and I think you put it to me very wisely once. About a skeptic. Like a skeptic doesn't believe in ghosts, so they're most likely not going to see a ghost because they're always coming up with reasons why they didn't see a ghost. It's just not part of their nature to buy into that. So yeah, it's very important, I think, to have belief in
Yeah,
your
but
psychic.
when we talk about we say that, oh, to have an open mind. What does it mean to have an open mind, right? This is one of the things, not to exclude that, right?
No,
Yeah,
for sure, for
for
sure.
sure. Конечно, точно, точно, Dr. Elliot, точно.
We have a couple of announcement, folks, there just before we let you go for the evening. Dr. Yana is going to be teaching an applied therapeutic hypnosis course this summer at our Parapsychological Education Center. It runs from July 2nd to August 20th. And it's 349 Canadian. You can find more information about that at ppri.net. I'll also be teaching a 8-week ghosts and hauntings course, which runs from July 3rd to August 21st, and then a 4-week poltergeist phenomena course that runs July 22nd to August 12th. So if anyone's interested in therapeutic hypnosis, ghosts, hauntings, and poltergeist, check out ppri.net. Also, this fall is our second annual Halifax Paranormal Symposium. It's going to be on Saturday, October 12th at the Halifax Tower Hotel and Conference Center. Tickets are on sale right now at ppri.net/tickets. If you buy your tickets before September 1st, you will have a chance to win 2 tickets to the Shag Harbor UFO Expo a couple weekends before our symposium. So you get double the paranormal fun for the price of one.
That is fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, the applied hypnosis course is a certification course. So if you're not too busy this summer, you might as well take the course and be prepared for the fall. So time
Yeah, it looks
goes by
really
so
interesting.
fast.
I uploaded your syllabus there, and you're going to talk about the fundamentals of hypnotherapy, archetypal passports of our soul, effective communication with clients, hit on that verbal communication and active listening. You're going to go through all the different stages of hypnosis, talk about suggestibility. I think it's great. I'm going to sit in and as a monitor, and I can answer any questions in the chat. But I know I'm going to learn some stuff from you for sure. So I'm looking
And
forward
also
to
the conversational hypnosis, how
it.
to affect people and how to, well, positively, of course, how to affect your environment for the positive outcome for yourself. And of course, it's throughout the history, it was used sometimes in a negative way to affect the humanity in a negative way. But we're teaching that to benefit yourself, benefit other people, and benefit the humanity.
It's going to be fantastic. Again,
Yes.
anyone's interested in those online courses, they're flexible. There is a live lecture date, and then it's recorded, and the recordings are put up right after class the following morning. So you have all week to catch up. So it's designed to be very flexible. I know because I was doing one university degree while working full time as a RCMP officer. So not easy doing a degree and being a police officer at the same time working shift work. So I am all about flexibility.
Yeah, and you can ask us personal, well, not personal questions. You can ask our questions personally, not personal questions, but personally. We'll exclude those, right?
I like that. That's good.
Well, you've been live with us on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM, with Science and the Paranormal, with fabulous Dr. Elliot, his ESP Excellency, and myself, Dr. Yana. We hope to see you next time. Next Tuesday, we will have a great guest with us, Dr. Hugh Ross, and he will be talking to us about the UFOs. He wrote several books on that, the little green men. So that will be very interesting to hear his perspective on that.
Oh, I can't
So,
wait for that one.
oh yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and have a good night, everyone.
Take care. We'll see you next Tuesday.